Welcome back to the Story of Scale podcast. We are in the middle of this AI architecture series, 4-part series. Excited to be sitting down with Chad once again today remotely. We did not even want to wait to get into the studio to get this into your feeds, your platforms. We got to talk AI. Now, Chad, some people right now just stumbled across this video on YouTube, for example, and they're like, talk about AI, you and everybody else. Dude, it's everywhere right now.
I know. Yeah. Part of why we didn't want to wait was the reality is this is moving so fast. And, you and I have not wanted, like, if you look at our social, I've started talking about AI a little bit more recently and getting away from growing business and all of that. But like, because we don't want to be the AI bros, right? We talked a little bit about that because AI is just this like, it feels like this, almost like Bitcoin was, a few years back, where it's like, oh, how can I make a quick buck? But I think you and I have a different perspective on this. I think I know you do, especially, and just the way that you're thinking about it. And what we've done behind the scenes with Astoria has been really incredible. I've talked to people that I would say are on the cutting edge of AI, and they're telling what they're doing. And I'm like, under my breath, just kind of snickering a little bit, like, almost like, child's play compared to what Harris has been doing and what you've been doing for the company. And really, I think the last 90 days has changed the trajectory of this company in a way that I think, like, it's just fun to dream about over the next 3 years, what that's going to be possible. And the reality is like what we're doing now, we may totally scrap 6 months from now because that's how much is changing. But the reality is that it's a massive learning, and the people need to dip their toe in the water, especially if you're a business owner, you're someone that feels like you're doing it all on your own, and you've got this, like, you're strapped for cash, or it's like this, we talked about in the first episode, is like, man, I've got these 3 hires. I feel like my business would just break through this revenue ceiling if I could hire these 3 people, or there's just one person, but we just aren't there yet and aren't ready to take the leap. And that's kind of the theory and the thesis that we went with. And when we talked about in episode 1 where you sat down next to your router and spent 8 hours on your knees building the first agent, and now it's 27. And so today we're going to talk about and helping you think through, okay, what's the first agent you should build? Because there's a lot out there, just build a super agent. And we talked about specialization. So what would you say is, like, what's the decision matrix someone should think through as a business owner, as a leader? What agent should I build first if we're going to say, hey, just start with one. Don't try to go 27 and be overwhelmed, but how do you start with one?
Yeah, I think I got to give props to Shane here, Shane McKenzie, our COO. Before he joined our team at Istoria, he was my executive coach, leadership coach, and he's helped me think about this differently, because I don't know that I, as someone who got into entrepreneurship somewhat accidentally, really thought about this from the leadership perspective. And when we got into AI agents, he helped me kind of put on that leadership lens and think about AI architecture through the lens of an org chart. And that was super helpful for me. And so I think if someone's thinking about building their first agent, that's where they should begin. And a lot of small business owners are using different operating systems. EOS is a super popular one, where it's like visionary, integrator, and then 3 departments. You basically have like marketing and sales, operations, and finance, right? I often hear Shane put them into 5 different categories, like admin, product development, sales, marketing, delivery. Hopefully I'm not messing those up, but it doesn't really matter what operating system you're using or how you organize departments. You really need to turn down the volume of all of the people who have an AI tool or platform they're trying to sell to you in your Instagram feed or your LinkedIn feed, and really look at your own business and go, but what do you need? Because the cool thing about AI is it can be anything, literally anything. And so I think a lot of people are trying to sell this off the shelf product, and some of that is cool. Like, I'm seeing a lot of bookkeeping agents being advertised right now on my Instagram feed, a lot of like personal assistant agents, a lot of like, put this person in your ad account, your Meta ads account, and it'll go do its thing. Those are really specialized, but that may not be what you need first specifically. So start with org chart, look at your different departments, and then think about agents from the bottom up, not top down. Because maybe we said this on a previous episode, but I'm a firm believer that robots can manage, but only humans can lead. And
Mm,
as a result, you trying to build an agent to like lead a bunch of stuff within your company is not going to go very well for you. But instead, think bottom up. What can they manage? Think of this as like, this is the first person who's going to go out there and actually do stuff for me.
mhm.
That
Yep.
would be,
That's so good. I think, for us, our eyes got open when we installed a thing called Victor,
mhm,
because we started talking about, and Victor started to do things. And then we're like, hey, why don't we just build our own? Because Victor was one that was like really the general, so he could do anything.
yeah,
And then, you built Vesper as as an assistant. What would
mhm,
you say is some of the decision matrix that you were like, hey, this is why I chose Vesper? And then I think the other thing I think that I would say has been one of the most powerful, especially for a team member. I work closely with Ben on our team on marketing and on the sales side. And when we launch things, a bottleneck a lot of times in these types of businesses is writing copy.
mhm,
And so obviously working with Ari, to me, I interface with Ari the most. And so I think as I would talk to some businesses, I think like an Ari might be the best fit for someone. If they're not a great writer, and they're the bottleneck in getting content out there, and Ari might be the best.
yeah.
So what types of businesses would you say maybe an assistant versus actually like a doer like Ari with it, marketing, copywriting, even a developer? We built out a developer, we built out project manager, like, so what type of companies would each of those make the most sense to have and start with?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to dodge the question, but I think it really goes back to my previous answer, which is you really do have to stop, audit your business, and ask yourself,
Hmm.
okay, I had unlimited budget right now to go hire and build a team. You're not going to be able to go hire 50 humans and train and onboard them overnight. So you're going to
Hmm.
have to protect them. And so, how do you prioritize? Are you focused on generating revenue and therefore you need an agent that's going to help grow revenue? Or are you going to be able to grow revenue if you had more time, but you're at time capacity? And so
Yep.
you need to buy some of your time. It's like, what's the greatest pain point? And right now, we're helping a lot of clients build custom agents. We're building agents alongside
Hmm.
trying to install them in their business. And
Yep.
you would think it's like what a lot of the internet is doing is like, oh, we built this perfect agent. You mentioned Victor. We'll just install that one. And that's not what we're finding. For some of them,
Hmm.
they ordinary at marketing, especially organic marketing with socials. And so, like putting AI, injecting that, an AI agent in their marketing process is actually going to make them not as effective at marketing because all we're doing is taking something they're really great at and giving it to something that's never going to be as good as a human app.
Hmm.
But other people are like drowning in admin. And so I'm like, cool, if you're good at admin, you don't need an RE. You need someone who can help you manage your calendar and respond to emails. You need more of an
Hmm.
style agent. Some people are really good at that stuff, but they suck at marketing and like doing social media content sucks the life out of them. So I think it really depends on where's the pain point? What does your business most need right now? You got to go back to the org chart perspective, think bottom up and go, okay, if I had unlimited resources, who would I go hire? Get rid of your limiting beliefs around, oh, I never even thought about hiring someone like a
Hmm.
travel, for example. Like we don't have a full time travel and logistics agent. I don't have the resources at my like small size business right now to go
Hmm.
employ someone whose only job is to research flight options and hotel
Hmm.
rooms, travel details on a calendar. Now we do, right? But it took me a little while to get past the limiting belief of like, oh, I could just put someone in that role. So when you start
But
looking at it,
let's stop there and at the travel agent, because I think it's important around the travel agent. It's like, oh, I can just go have Claude build me a soul file, memory file for a travel agent. But what makes the travel agent so unique to what you built, right? There's like certain, you did research around, hey, there's certain tools that travel agents have access to that the average person doesn't. It's not like you can just go, oh, I'm going to build a travel agent and hey, I want you to just be really good at booking travel and using Perplexity to research and do all that like a normal human. But there's another layer that you had to go through in building Vesper. And this is kind of my point of like, you have to have a job description. You have to be really clear on what you want that person to do. And then like the agents that are working really well we've spent a lot of time with them, just like any business. onboarding an employee is massively important, giving them clear objectives, making sure they stay in their lane, and working with them over the first 90 days before you really unleash them into everything. So it's not like you give the whole candy store to an employee from day one. It's the same way with an agent. You start, give them small things, big medium things, bigger things before you start to just give them everything. But I really liked, when I remember when you installed and introduced us to the travel agent, you're like, and we did this because this is different than what maybe the average person would do.
Yeah, some of it goes back to what we talked about in the last episode, those two S words, specialization and security, right?
Hmm.
Have all these sub agents that have very specific roles. But I remember one of the very first clients we helped install some custom agents into her business. I talked to her like 2 weeks later and she's like, yeah, I stopped using both agents. I was like, what? Why? Why would you go through the effort and resources to get support from us to help you do that only to stop using them 2 weeks later? She's like, I realized that humans were better at doing that particular. I was like, I am very pro human of
Yeah.
all talking about AI publicly. I feel like I'm about as pro human as you possibly can get. I'm very optimistic about the future and that humans are the stars of the imagination age that we're moving into, not AI. We're all going to get
Hmm.
desensitized to what feels like the magic of AI. And I don't know that that's very far around the corner. We're going to be like, oh, yeah,
Hmm.
AI been around forever, right? It's like, no, it's still pretty new technology.
Yeah.
And agentic AI feels even more magical. But dude, it's not very much time is going to pass. We're all going to look back and be like, oh, we're just going to shrug our shoulders and using an AI agent is just going to be like another Tuesday in the office. It's not going to be that magical. So I preface that by doubling down on the fact that humans are amazing. But I promise you, the types of agents that we installed in her business are better than any human could ever be at the type of role that we put them in. And so what happened? What happened is 2 weeks went by. 2 freaking weeks. Are you kidding me? That is not very much time, especially if you think about like bringing in a human, onboarding them and training them and expecting them to be perfect at their job in 2 weeks. And it
Totally.
wasn't even that they were ineffective at their role, it's that they didn't have the preferences they needed from the business owner on how to do a great job. So
They didn't
this
have
agent
clarity.
built in skills. They were a rock star at abilities, but they had clear expectations on their role and responsibility. They weren't given enough time to be trained and onboarded. So, yes, you can craft a great soul file. You can put that person in a perfect or that agent in a perfect role, clear responsibilities, clear expectations. But if you don't give enough time to develop them in the same way that you would a human, it's not going to work. It's going to fail. So,
Hmm.
we talked. She's back to leveraging them again and getting more value than ever. So,
Yeah.
yes, to your point, you've got to think about them through that leadership perspective. I keep coming back to the org chart.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let us do the travel agent. That role, I realizing that one of our human EAs on our team was genuinely struggling due to just basic human capacity. We were out of
Hmm.
time, the travel research necessary based on the demand on my calendar right now. And a lot of the travel is happening internationally, which requires just an extra degree of research, right?
Hmm.
And because my preferred airline is Delta, Delta doesn't fly everywhere. They fly almost everywhere, but not literally everywhere. So we're branching out to other travel websites and airline websites. I was like, wait a second, travel agents, don't they have like a little sneaky password that gets them to like a behind the scenes tool where just all that stuff aggregates and like if that is available to a travel agent, what is required to become a travel agent? And do any of those companies offer API access that might allow me to hook up an agent to go look at the same stuff they're looking at? Because if it's just a password and data, and
Yeah.
AI is awesome at analyzing data, that could be one of the things that a human would struggle to keep up with compared to an agent. That's how we landed as that one being one of the next ones. But unless like that's your full-time job is just constantly traveling, or that's a part of maybe an admin role that
Hmm.
specialized in the first agent you would want to build, you're probably going to build a slightly more generalist,
Hmm.
like a rock star
Yeah.
executive
And
assistant.
like we're working with a commercial real estate agent right now, and I spent some time with him, and he he's so busy. His business, it's him and like two office people, and his
Hmm.
business is so dependent. Dependent's maybe not the right word. Like, they've grown, they're the biggest in their market, hands down. Everyone, they come to him. The problem is, because of that, he's so busy. There's leads coming in every day on all of his listings, and he doesn't have time to get through it. And so we were just on the back end, and he was showing me this, we get all this information and this data. And I'm like, well, you could automate all of this. Like, you could literally follow up within minutes of this. And so we're building out that agent for him to be able to do that. And there's two pieces of software that every day he's getting 30 to 40 leads, and he's not doing anything with it. And his business is still growing and thriving. And I'm like, can you imagine what it could be if, and then he's now having to hire a human to ultimately be able to manage those leads coming in, because he's not even going to be able to handle the flow, because it's going to be too much work. And so that's where he's at. So it's a revenue producer for him. It's like, we've got to figure that out. And that's been a pain point for 9 months. And the thing is the business is working. This happens to a lot of the business is working. I'm up into the right, I'm up 20% year over year, but there's a missed opportunity. And I always call it this like holy discontent of a business owner, where it's like, man, we're growing, but I know we should be growing more and faster because of X, Y, and Z. And this gives you resources to be able to expedite hitting that frustration gap, breaking through that frustration gap and getting where you want to be. So, talk a little bit, Harris, about the tool we created. And again, we've touched on soul files, memory files. We're not getting into the nitty gritty here, because you can go to Claude, you can go to ChatGPT and ask what all that is. Um, and I'll share a little bit. I think, for me, when I built my own assistant, I spent days just going back and forth with Claude, talking to it. Like, this is what I'd want this person to do. This is what I wouldn't want them to do. And just kind of, I'm a verbal processor, so verbally processing. This is what I don't want them to do. I don't want them to talk to me this way. Here's my personality, all these things. And as I started word vomiting, it started asking me more questions. And then I said, now that you know everything, craft the soul file, craft the memory file, all those things that allow it to do it, where you don't have to sit down and just like do it. It's better for you to verbally, I would say, vomit, verbally process what that is. Um, but talk a little about the tool we created to just help people think through the architecture and the way that a team could look, knowing kind of our business and what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I love that you use the word architecture. Another great example, by the way, of being able to respond to leads faster in real estate, like classic.
Hmm.
I was training literally an agent this morning. It's like, hey, we have a little bit of lead flow coming in from this thing, but we're not able to respond to those leads fast enough right now because we have our own capacity issues.
Hmm.
And flow around how to measure the quality of each of those leads so that an agent knows which ones to respond to on my behalf. Then the outreach doesn't come from me. It comes from someone else, which I also like. But all of that is happening through an architecture lens, which is what's
Hmm.
missing from a lot of the conversations that are happening on social media right now with all of the quote unquote AI influencers. Is you've got to look at this from an org chart perspective. You got to think like a leader. How would you architect a company's culture? And how would you architect your org chart? What roles would you put certain people in? And there's not enough people talking about AI through that lens, which is why we built the tool that we built. And so you can grab it for free. It gives you our entire current roster of agents and how we structured that entire team. It doesn't mean that you can get this tool and have to be overwhelmed and go turn around and build 27 agents. It will help unlock some of your own perspective that you might currently be missing out on. And you'll find yourself going through this document going, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. And so learn from some of our experience, certainly some of our pain and the process, and certainly some of the ways that we're now succeeding by trying to be early adopters with this technology. Again, it's totally free. You can grab it at astoria.com/AI teams, I believe it is. Yeah, do I
Just
have that link
team,
correct?
AI
Teams,
team.
I team. Yeah. So Astoria, Istoria/AI team. Pop in your name and email address, and we'll shoot that over to you. And it'll be, I think, one, inspiring to you. Second, it'll be super instructional and tactile, and it'll set you up with some very obvious next steps and give you the type of clarity that you need to start taking action. Because look, I get it. This is where I was months ago. I was hearing everybody talk about this. You have this little whisper or gut instinct where you know you should be doing something about it. At the very least, you should be learning about this technology. And you don't have to go like deep, deep, deep down the rabbit hole like we have, but you should at least be dipping your toes in the water with Agentic
Hmm.
AI. Not We're not talking about simple use and interaction with LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude. Many people are using AI the way you used Google back in the early 2000s, and you were
Yeah.
way under leveraging this technology. And there's a way to do this responsibly, efficiently, and it doesn't have to be crazy expensive. So,
Yeah.
astoria.com/AI team, grab that free
Yeah. I'll
download.
say a little bit. I heard from a couple people that downloaded the resource this past week, and they were blown. It's 30 plus pages. Because each agent gets basically kind of a profile page as to what tools it's connected to, what its primary job is, what it's not supposed to do. So it'll, again, as you go through it, it'll really give you ideas. And architecture is the big word, because we describe how it fits in, how that individual fits into the greater architecture and what it can and can't do. And again, I think the goal is just to inspire you to think through what's good for your business. So episode 3, we just talked about kind of what agent should you start with as a business owner, as a leader. We're going to jump into the next episode, the final episode in this 4-part series, where we're going to peel back the curtain a little bit as to how has this really changed our business? How are we as humans interacting with 27 agents? We've teased it a little bit, but I think we're going to go deeper into it. And honestly, there's been team members that were a little more resistant to it. Some, me included, who was like, I'm in, how do I do this? And then there's some that were just like, oh, we'll see, we'll test the waters. And now we're 90 days in, and I don't want to share too much, but it's pretty fun to see how everyone's using it. And I remember when we first said it, you were like, hey, I want this all done publicly in channels because I want us to learn from it. And me, for someone who, like, I would say is pretty well versed in AI, I felt like it was somewhat vulnerable, being like, oh, going in and I'm talking to this agent. Everyone can see how now I'm thinking about accomplishing work. And it's almost like a cheat code, because there's the part of you that still feels like, oh, like I'm not doing the work. Someone else is doing the work and I'm getting paid. But at the end of the day, I'm getting paid for outcomes and deliverables, not to do the work, but just means I'm going to be able to do more work and do better work and do more high leverage work. So, any thoughts on that as we've closed this episode, Harris, and jump to the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add and say, I can say as the owner of the company, like at no point do I see a team member that I compensate, you included, and I'm like, what the heck? What a hack. Like, I can't believe he's so lazy. Like, you're doing the very thing that I created the agents for. And so
Hmm.
I'm not a big fan of time-based compensation. I'm a huge fan of value-based compensation. I think that has always been the best way to do things, but it is absolutely the future. And so for people who are trading time for money, there's this, and even business owners who are used to compensating people for their time. Dude, you've got to free yourself from that mentality, or you're just going to struggle in a new world.
Hmm.
Because people that you work for stop like managing the clock and start managing people's energy, and helping get the most amount of value from them. And if the value's there, gosh, like, share the love. The pie gets bigger. Everybody gets to make
Yeah.
more money. We all get to make a bigger difference while living a better story, and a story worth scaling, which is probably a great way to end, since this is the Story of Scale podcast. So, yeah, I love it. This has been fun. I'm grateful for your nudge to be like, hey, we got to be talking about this publicly even more. So don't go out there and build a vague agent. Don't go build an agent thinking it's going to be better at being a human than humans are. The skills of
Hmm.
the future, leadership, creativity, storytelling, humans are always going to outshine technology because of our ability to be creatures that feel and have emotion. But gosh, let's get you some agents that do everything else so that you truly can live a story worth scaling. Uh, so thanks for listening in. This has been fun. Chad, I'm pumped about episode 4. We'll talk again soon.